Because as I was, all right, got it. As I was telling Carrie earlier, I never had full intentions of becoming an artist. It took me a really long time to identify as an artist because I thought that word was scary, that because I didn't understand how you could make a career out of art. And it was overwhelming to me. And because of that, I did not go to art school because I didn't want anyone telling me how to paint or what to do with my art. I wanted to continue to let it be something that came through me intuitively. But until I was in DC as an event planner and doing art on the side, when something kind of alive in me decided I got to do something with this. And that journey is what I am going to share with you today. And I have a little slideshow because this is a marketing presentation. I wanted to show what I'm talking about through visuals, which is very important in my whole spiel. And my presentation mimics my brand. So that is what I wanted to share with you as we talk. So I'm going to share my screen real quick and share. Can you guys see that? Are we good? Okay. Yep. So this is, I'm just going to start out with, this was one of my, I found this quote and I love it. And it's what has inspired me about bridging the gap between art and business. And it's an Andy Warhol quote, and it's, being good in business is the most fascinating kind of art. Making money is art, and working is art, and good business is the best kind of art. So that I loved, because I think that's where a lot of artists maybe have a struggle or a disconnect, is how do I get from painting in my studio on the canvas or whatever medium you have to sharing it with the world. And that in itself can be fun and can be playful and is an art within itself. And that is what I learned over the years to keep playing with. And that's what I want to start out sharing. But before I get into that, I want to just give you an overview of what we're going to talk about today. So first, as I was mentioning, we're going to go into the art of play. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the actual mechanics behind building your brand and how to do that and how to promote yourself, and a little bit about giving away your art and receiving through that. And then some actual tangible marketing concepts to keep your art business alive. And then we'll end with some, as I call, tools for your toolkit, which will be some actual resources that I have used over the years and kind of collected as far as websites and ideas to help you start. And it feels overwhelming. I know the idea of getting all of that out there, but it's baby steps and it's fun if you choose to make it fun. So that's why we're starting with my thing. It's not going. That's where we're going to start out with talking about the art of play. So I imagine that most of you feel very passionate about your artwork, and that is the idea of how do you take that passion and market it? Because as an artist, I imagine you relate that there's something very much alive in you. It's intuitive, it's fun, it brings you joy, and it's about sharing that joy with the world through what sometimes can feel scary as the word marketing or business or communication. So I did this organically when I started my art business, which has now been 10 years ago. I imagined what it would be like to be able to successfully have a business and still keep my creative energy alive, and to not let the business aspect take over. And I had fun with it. And I learned through some teachers along the way how to get really to that. And as you know, all businesses have a mission statement. So I personally feel that artists should have a mission statement as well, or something that they stand for. For example, mine is finding art in the everyday. And when I was first getting started, I was able to play with that and promote myself through that. And some questions that you could explore was, what does art mean to you? And what do you want your audience to feel when they experience your art or your product or your passion through your words? Because what we do is visual. It's coming up with the words to go along with those visuals and sharing a bit about yourself within those words. So that's just an idea of play and imagination. And I follow this philosopher Wayne Dyer, who says you'll see it when you believe it. And I do believe that very much. Instead of you'll see it when you believe it, it has to be the reverse. And when you paint or whenever medium you use, you see the vision before you paint it, most likely. I know when I'm in my studio, if I see the idea in my head, it comes out on the canvas so much easier than if I just start painting aimlessly. So it's applying those same ideas that you use in your studio or on your mediums in this marketing mindset. So playing with that first. And Carrie and I were chatting earlier, and she used the word discovery. We're always discovering in our art. So it's an invitation to discover something a little bit more about what you stand for, and then to marry it with your visuals. So once you get there and you have an idea of what that looks like to you, that is very ambiguous and kind of out there, and it's an imagination concept. Then it's bringing those ideas into form, and that's where it gets fun. That's where we come up with the brand identity, which is hugely important in building any career, any brand or business, is brand identity. And with that is brand confidence. And I used that visual as an example. And I told you earlier, my finding art in every day. So those paintings are actually scraps from my studio floor. So that's every day. You know, those pieces represent my everyday because they are the residue of my paintings. So, and it's funny because people think I don't know how to paint in neutrals because my brand is so bright, but that's what keeps it interesting, because I could do a little spiel on neutrals and make it fun, but it's staying within that brand identity. And I don't know if you guys have ever made a vision board. I know those are popular, and that's how I came up with my logo and my branding, is just pulling things that inspired me from magazines or fabrics or in nature. What was it? What is it that is representative of my art? And then you're taking that play that we just talked about, that concept, and it's starting to come into form through this vision board. And hey, you might know right away, you don't need the vision board. You got it. You know what you want. It's right there, and you could skip that step, but it's still fun to play because you might discover something about yourself that you didn't know before. And to get ideas, you could also look at other artists that inspire you and get ideas, because it's not copying, it's inspiration. I have plenty of artists that inspire me that I'm constantly looking to for inspiration and motivation. And also with this is determining your place in the marketplace. Are you looking to travel Europe and be in fine galleries, or are you looking to work with interior designers to help bring light and fun to people's homes? You know, it's getting there too in this step of the game is narrowing down who your target audience is. And so you're staying consistent. For example, mine for sure is interior design and corporate and products. You know, I'm not looking to be in fine art galleries right now. That where I stand is that, and that's what I'm doing. So it works, and that's the fun part too. So once you've got that, we've come up with what our mantra, our mission statement is, then you get kind of clear on what your brand is. And at the end, I'm going to show you some actual websites to help with this, on how to make a logo and how to get some brand materials that can start to meld this little package that reflects you and your art. So then once we have that, then it's all about, so you've got this art, you've got a logo, and perhaps a website, and we'll get to that. But you have, most importantly, even if you didn't have all that, you have art and you want to sell it. No one else is going to sell it for you but yourself. And that someone taught me the word art of self-promotion long time ago. And it was scary at first because selling yourself and your art is intimidating, and some people might not like it. And it takes a lot of confidence to tell someone they need your art. But it's just like anything else. And I've learned to look at it that way. A salesperson who sells anything, if they believe in the product, you want to believe in their product, and you want to buy it. But if they are hesitant, why would you buy it? Or if they questioned it, or, oh yeah, sure, this art might look good on your wall, I don't know if it's not that good, it's not my best. Nobody wants that. They will want it if you love it. And that's the other thing. They don't know what they don't know. And I have to remind myself of that, is even if you know it might need more, because sometimes we know paintings are never ever done. There can always be something, and you're always evolving as an artist. So when you look back on your work from 2014, you might cringe, at least I do, when I look at my 2014 art of, oh, I've learned so much since then. But that's just me, because it's so personal. So promoting yourself is what I would suggest. And how to do that, how to promote yourself, is through social media. And again, we'll get into the more of the weeds with that. But it's putting yourself out there, and even being bold enough to knock on people's doors, maybe a doctor's office that you think has ugly walls and needs some love, offer to put some paintings in there, or a restaurant that looks like it could use some love. It's you might not make money from that transaction, but you're putting yourself out there to the world to see. It's got to start somewhere. And again, with you is the best place. And I have a little funny story to share about, oh, and this picture. I mean, I'm laying on a surfboard on the middle of my studio, but this picture was featured in 3 magazines, including Virginia Living. And I think it's because it's so bold. And I wasn't afraid to just put myself out there. I had no idea it was going to get that much exposure, but hey, why not? I had fun doing it. But how I embodied and practiced this art of self-promotion was 10 years ago. I still a very good friend who's an interior designer, said I was starting to play with this idea of, I'd like the idea of being an artist and selling my work, but I don't know how to do this. This is overwhelming. Nobody's going to buy it. I'm crazy. I've lost my mind. And she said, why don't you put a Facebook gallery up with your work? Granted, I had never marketed myself, so just keep that in mind, and introduce it as your latest collection, and put underneath that the pieces are sold, which was not a truth, but it was practicing that. Look at this awesome collection that I have that is sold. And it just got this really cool energy around it. And I had no attachment to it because it didn't matter. It was just some things I was playing with. There was no pressure, and it created this incredible momentum for me. And the rest is kind of history from that point, because it got people talking and it got me excited, and it went from there, and it got people asking questions. And then those questions turned into commissions, and then those commissions turned into commissions for their other friends of friends. So that leads to that word of mouth marketing. It's once you get some people who really love your work, encourage them to share it, and it happens organically. It's not like a big ask. When people have art they love to talk about it. You probably already know that, but they do. When I sometimes go into the homes of people who are wanting a piece of mine, they show me every single piece of art they have and the story behind it. So as you know, art is personal, and people will share your story. And that's why also that promoting it, putting it, donating your art. I did a lot of that, and I still do, donating to community, to charities that you're involved in or that you're passionate about, for their silent auctions, things like that. Just getting it out there is really helpful because it gets people talking. So we're gonna jump to the time is money in a minute, because I want to continue talking about this. The next slide is more on this, share your work with the community, because sometimes giving art away is the best way to start. And it feels, a little draining at first. Maybe I'm giving so much away and not getting it back, but it always comes around. It's that law of karma. It comes back when you share your work, and then it gets noticed, and you'll have perhaps galleries see, oh, look at this at the silent auction. I love this artist. I've never heard of them. And then perhaps they'd call you. It starts this whole energy of your work getting out in the world. And with that too, this is one thing, and I know I'm fire hosing you with a ton of information, and I will share more details about how to do these things at the end. But building partnerships and collaborating even with other artists. I did that early on. I worked with a jewelry designer who loved my stuff, and I did a simple little gift tag for her holiday collection. And then it inspired, from there, the gift tag inspired this whole line of jewelry that is sold. It's called Evocateur, and it's a national company, and they're all over the place. And they bought the rights to some of my art. And now I just get a check from them every year, and I don't have to do anything. So it's very fun. So don't be afraid to reach out to people who you might think you could help, or you could do something cool together. It's fun to co-collaborate in the art world. And I think sometimes as artists, we feel like we have to keep our skills to ourselves, and we don't want to share too much. But I think sharing and building partnerships creates a lot of opportunities. Even if it's that's another thing that ties into all of this. But the art of self-promotion and building partnerships is hosting your own show. I did a lot of that, and I still do. And that's another thing in the community. Local restaurants are always looking to do cool and different things. You could suggest that they show your work and give back a percentage to a collaboration or a charity that's important to both of you. Is a great way to get your name out there. And another resource too is art brokers. They do take a percentage of your sale, but they do all the marketing, which is genius. I'm working now with an art broker out of Richmond, and I'm doing a 3D circle collage thing. And all I have to do is create the artwork, and she's paying for all the marketing and promoting it. And she has a huge list of followers. So therefore it just naturally grows my followers and my my audience. So that's another one to consider. And they're all over. There's tons of art brokers. If you just Google it, you can find a bunch, but it's making sure it's a match for you and what you have to offer. So you feel it's a trusting relationship and you feel good about it. Okay, let's see what we have next. Okay, so sustainable growth. So you have this vision, you have this mission, you have the look, you've made some connections, you're good. And it's now keeping this momentum alive of what you have worked so hard to create through your art and your vision and your marketing. And then it comes down to the weeds of don't stay stagnant. Talked about this earlier. It's if your audience is so used to seeing you do the same thing and you're feeling it. I've noticed this when I am tired of my own thing, it's time to switch it up. And because if you're tired and you're over it, your audience they're going to feel that. So it's staying open to new ideas always, even if you have your things that will always be your things, but doing something completely different within there to keep it mixed up, to keep people on their toes about you. And with that, the data piece and your audience, your list, I can't stress this enough, is your list is so hugely important beyond social media. I know everyone is obsessed with their followers and their likes and all that, but that could go away easily. And social media doesn't have any data. It's just a name. So your physical list that has content with people's addresses and email content and way to communicate directly with them is your bread and butter, 100%. And it takes time to build, but that's where you can send out personal mailers and sales and communicate with them efficiently. And then there's so many things you can do with your list once it grows, and you're going to have lists within lists, but nurturing that, it's a discipline to keep up with your list and make sure it's accurate, but it's a power tool. And then you can celebrate your audience. I think that's really important. The people who have supported you and purchased things from you, and just they celebrate you by following you or by looking at you on social media or supporting you just by sharing your work or word of mouth marketing. So celebrating them is huge in little ways, even just online sales directed to them, and customer service too. That is so huge when you're getting started, and always, not just getting started, but those little things like writing a thank you note when someone purchases something from you, even if it's small, to show that you care about them is huge. And it comes back around too. And you'll have those, that's how you sustain your customers. They start years ago and they keep coming back because they know they're going to get quality service from you. And also with that, with the stagnation thing, if you're doing the same thing over and over, and maybe you have these huge canvases that not everyone can afford. This was a game changer for me. And I want everyone to be able to do it, is to scan your artwork professionally. It's not just like a scanning machine. You have to do it at a professional scan service place. DeCarlo Scanning in Salisbury is where I do mine. And it's a little expensive to do, but it digitizes your art. All you have to do is take the piece, and they can do any size. They can do huge or they can do tiny, and it turns it into a little file that then you can do pretty much anything with. And it's under lock and key for you. They help save it for you, and then you have this vault of online digitized images of your art. So it's almost like a modern day portfolio that is just this power tool, because then these images can be turned into prints. They can be turned into product. They can be turned into fabric. They can be turned into wallpaper. They can be turned into anything you can think of through this form, because then the resolution can be expanded to however big or small it needs to be. So someone taught me that early on, and I'm so grateful, because now I have this huge collection of online images, and that is how I can do the jewelry line. And you can sell the rights to people for whatever fee you want, and then they have the rights to use that image. But it's still, depending on the agreement you sign with them, it's still your image. So it's not like you can't use it yourself, but they're the only, for example, jewelry line that could use it. So it's thinking outside the box. Once you do that, the possibilities are pretty limitless. And I went down that road pretty heavy and created a whole product line, which then opened a ton of doors for me, because it was affordable to everyone. Because I have cocktail napkins. I have everything from a $10 cocktail napkin set to my commission pieces of art. So it makes it affordable to all, and it's fun. And today there's so many resources on how to do that. So it's relatively easy to do. And there's tons of ways to market it online, or to, have your own little shop. And with that too, there's so many opportunities locally, I know, for having little pop-up shops and ways to just put your stuff out there, through not just the products, but also the art. But it's beyond the canvas. There's so many opportunities in today's world to put your art in so many different forms. So from there, so yeah, the tools for your toolkit is, and this is what, if anyone is really interested in learning more, I'm happy to chat with you after, or send out a resource list of everything, because we talked about social media, and that's a huge way to spread your work. And Instagram and Facebook and Pinterest are the ones that I use, but there are others. But those are they're connected, and you can post on Instagram and then it automatically goes to Facebook. So you're not having to post a million different places. So that's an awesome way to get started, even before you have a website. I mean, you could start an Instagram account in 2 seconds and put your art on it and call it a day. It's the fastest way to start. But then also a website is huge, because I don't know about you guys, but when I look at someone on Instagram, I automatically want to know what their website looks like, because I'm obsessed with branding and marketing. I want to see if they're congruent and if they're really marketing themselves. It fascinates me. So Squarespace is and look, let me back up and say, I struggle with technology. I get anxiety around it. I don't like it. I'm learning to like it. I'm learning to love it, but it's so user friendly. Squarespace is made for the average person who's not into coding or understands all that. It's pretty basic. And as I was sharing with Carrie earlier, there are so many young, like high school even, or college age kids who are hungry to make some money, who would probably, that's what I did. I have a college student who helps me with my website, because that takes up too much of my time where I want to be creating. So she helps me kind of manage that to keep it current. Also, Canva is a online branding tool, which, if you haven't heard of it, it's so much fun, and it makes it very easy, user-friendly to build a brand. It even has a thing called a brand hub, which it's so smart. It can help you create a logo, a whole brand package. It's a good way to to get started when you're playing. You can even do a digital vision board, as we were talking about earlier, through Canva. And then once you get that, there's this website called Moo, which has tons of options for business cards, because that's another thing. I have this brand card. It's bigger than a business card, and I secretly plop them places. And that's another thing. And that's why it's big. I want people to see it. If you had your art, say, in a restaurant that you promoted yourself to the owner and said, my art needs to be in your restaurant, having some cards visible so people can get a hold of you is smart. And those are some resources of where you can do that. Canva, also, you can print directly from them, so you don't have to even go outside of that website to get this stuff. And as I was talking about earlier, the list is so key, and that but it's MailChimp is another resource where you can house all of your audience and send out customizable newsletters and update people on what you're doing. And it's, again, takes some time. All of this stuff takes time, right, to learn, but it's not, it's made for someone who is trying to grow their own business independently. And I think it's intuitive and user-friendly for an artist who doesn't like technology. I can speak for that. So that client database and point of sale, I mean, we're getting really heady into the weeds here, but Square, you've probably seen commercials for Square. It's that little thing. You've used a Square, I'm sure. If you're a consumer, you use a Square to purchase things. And it's a great way, if you start doing pop-up shops, it can just plug into your phone and keep track of all of your sales. And it can merge with MailChimp, so they all become one. And again, it took me a long time to figure all this out. So I'm glad I get to share the Cliff Notes version of the tools. And the other that I was talking about earlier, with turning your art into product outside of the canvas, Zazzle is a funny name, but that's where you can have a shop on Zazzle within the site itself, or they are the host company. So you don't even have to purchase your own product. It's pretty cool. They sell it for you and you get a percentage. Is a fun way to start. Or you can purchase it outright and sell it as you want, which is what I did for these shows. Spoonflower is a fabric and wallpaper resource where you take these scans, or if you're a digital artist, you can use those digitized drawings and turn them into fabric. And that's super fun too. There's so many avenues, but these are some that I've loved. And the online portfolio is what I was talking about with scanning your art. And pictures of your artwork too, because today with the cameras and the phones, it's pretty clear, but there's nothing like a scanned file of your artwork. It's beautiful, and then you can turn it into prints and anything. Like I was saying, there's no pixelating when you do that. There's no fuzziness. It's clean. And now I understand why artists charge so much for their prints, because it costs a lot to get there and to print them, but they're beautiful quality. People ask me all the time, they think it's real, which I tell them that it's not, but that's how good the quality is when you scan your art. And pricing your art, I just wanted to dabble in that a bit before we end, because that to me was probably the worst part of how on earth am I supposed to put a number on my art. And what it comes down to is taking the emotion out of it and really getting down to basics of what it costs you to get there, including your time, then times 2 is what I learned. So it's doubling it, so you actually end up making some money. And when I went to, I don't know, for America's Mart in Atlanta, it's a big gift show. I did 3 years there with my product line, and I learned so much about how products are marked up a crazy amount, like 75%. So it's hard for me now to buy a basic thing because I know how much they are marked up. But it's fair to mark up your art, and it's fair to get paid for your time. I mean, people get paid to hourly for most things that are handmade. So, and staying confident in that and not second guessing yourself with that. And hey, they don't need to know. It could take you 5 minutes or it could take you 5 days, but it's your art and it's a part of you, and staying consistent in that is, I think, key. Along with consistency too is another thing with your pricing, with your look, right? If you're promoting yourself as a serene artist and the logo has water energy in it and it's calming, and then all of a sudden you're doing like hard geometrics and bold colors, it sends a mixed message while you're building your brand. I think it's important to stay congruent for a while, like while you're building it, and get a following and get your story and share yourself through that with some consistency to build that, and then start to mix it up to keep people on their toes about what you're doing. So I have told you so many things, I know, but the one thing too I want to make sure I cover is through all this, and if you're truly passionate about building a brand and building a business through your art, sometimes you might forget, why am I even here? Because you lose sight of the passion piece of the art. So it's important to always check back in with yourself and not let the business part get too much, because of why you're even doing the business is because of the art that you're creating. So taking time to do that and stepping away from the business aspects, because you will start to get people sharing their opinions and telling you what you should be doing. The shoulds are the worst. And that's when you could possibly get lost in these different opinions, but it's staying true to form, to you, and always going back to that thing we started at the beginning of the playing of what does art mean to you and what do you want to evoke in others, and making sure through it all you're staying true to that, and having fun is the most important at the end of the day. So that, I know I have another slide, but we've covered it and it's not actually letting me click on it. So
we actually have several questions whenever.
Oh, that's awesome. Good. Because I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Okay.
So first question is, what size is your brand card?
This brand card is just a regular 5x7.
Okay.
And it has enough, and I'm all about the quality paper, so it doesn't get all wrinkled, but it has enough room for me to put a little bit of my bio and a photo on the back. But I also have a business card with this, and then if people order things online, I place this in, so it's a little takeaway for them.
Was that through Moo as well?
This one was through Canva.
Oh, gotcha.
So Canva can do, and as I was saying, you can print directly through Canva. And if you're interested in this, you're going to have a heyday on Canva. It's like a playground.
It is a great tool. One question going back to your vision board. What sort of things do you put on your vision board? And where do you like to put to store the vision board?
So I'm not a fan of the digital vision board. I know it's a feature, but I feel like I don't look at that enough. So I have one actually in my closet because I am obsessed with interiors, and and it's very private, I think, the vision board, but I go in my closet every day to get things. So it's in there. I've also sometimes had it in my bathroom, just a little place, or my office. I move it around. I have multiple because I'll do vision boards for projects as well, but building a brand is a big one, and it grows. And
Mhm.
collecting things, magazines is a great place to start, or fabrics, material, texture, anything. And it's not limited. And or people. Oh, that's another one. When I was really trying to get clear on what I wanted my brand to be, I printed out some images from other people's websites that inspired me to help me get really clear on what that was.
Right. Let's see. It sounds like one of the things that I heard you talk about was momentum, and it sounds like it's the first step that is the hardest. And then after that, whether it's through connections or just more ideas after you've taken that first step, it sounds like that is the hardest. Would you agree?
100%. I think momentum with anything is the where to start. You gotta, and it's not getting too far ahead of yourself before you start. Before, don't think I gotta do all this. It's that baby step. Like, maybe just make the Instagram and play with it and go from there. Start small, and then ride the wave, and take, when someone asks about your art or is inspired by it, jump on it and see where it goes, and stay outside the box. That's a huge one, I think, because you never know where opportunities to collaborate or promote might be. But if you're stuck in doing it a certain way, then you might miss that
Yeah,
idea.
that makes sense. One question I had for you was when you were talking about hosting your own show, can you give some examples on like what type of venues you were
Yeah,
talking
so
about?
I did, yes, 100%. I did it actually. When we were sharing, I was having this floodgates of memory of all the shows I did. I actually did one at my house, and it was for, of course, when I was starting, my list was small and it was closer family and friends, but I called it Take It Off the Wall. So I put all the art in my house on my walls, and I made it a charity event. So I gave a percentage of my proceeds back. And that's always a good way to grow your list, is to collaborate with a charity and they share their list with you, and then you give back to them and everybody wins. Also, I did, downtown Salisbury has some old buildings that were not being used, and I just found out who owned them and did some shows there. Granted, there was no heat in the bathroom, but it worked. So, because I know that's intimidating to the idea of venue costs and that kind of thing. That's why I was saying restaurants there too want people and energy around, and that kind of thing. And farmers markets, that's around, like, there's always art twists places. It's just a matter of playing and then finding which one kind of lands. But hosting your own show is a really cool way to start. And if you don't want to do it just you, it's do a group of artist friends that maybe have different mediums and host it together, because there is a lot of pressure involved with hosting your own show. But if you had a couple different things to offer and a couple different lists to share, again, the list, it just expands and it lessens the costs and all that good stuff, and it gives people something to do that's different.
Yeah. So a couple more questions here. As far as the lists go, do you ever send out like printed postcards? And if you do, how do you feel that they work?
So I've dabbled in both of this because I think the law, it's a lost art, an actual physical invitation. And for shows that I am putting a lot of my own resources in and time, I do an actual mailer. But I'm picky about it, not just a flyer. I don't want it to be a piece. I want people to stop and pay attention to it. So it's the nicer paper, but that's not for everything. Those are special occasions when I mean by resources, when I've invested in a lot of product that I want to sell. So I want to make sure I have people in there. So that is important. But for as far as the newsletters, that is on, I try to do those kind of regularly, and that, but when I do them, I share something about myself, but I also am offering something, either a sale or a special collection or something like that, not just telling. It's always an opportunity for them within that.
Great. We have a couple
So
more.
both, definitely both. I would say, but you don't have to do the hard invitation all the time. But when you're passionate about it and you're like, I want people there, I want my people there, I think it's worth it.
You do print and digital.
And even the handwritten on some. I also follow up with people that I know are my top clients to make sure that they're there, because it's always nice. I always know it's going to be a good show when something sells before the show starts. So it's nice to kind of get that's that momentum.
Definitely a great way to go into a show.
Yes.
We have a couple more questions. It says, what is the commission that what is the commission that an interior designer, a broker, or a restaurant could take? Any names of brokers? Do you do cold calls with interior designers?
I do not do cold calls with them, because right now I am at kind of capacity with my work that I have, but I have thought about it. I would definitely do that. I would 100% call them up and sell yourself, because they love it. Especially, I mean, and I've also learned that I don't get my feelings hurt. I mean, I have interior designers that tell me, yeah, like, I don't like that, it needs more blue. I mean, I've learned to just let my ego aside, because I get a lot of business that way. And it makes it, and it's a transaction, but I am making money off of it. And it's up to you how much percentage, but I think anywhere from 15 to 20 is pretty standard. But again, it's clear terms from the beginning that you decide. What also is nice is, for the most part, if you do it that way, they're interacting with the client. So it's less of the, if that's it, but that to each his own. I personally enjoy just being told, like, getting the facts and being able to do the work versus nurturing the client. They do that. So and they go to the meetings and they take the measurements and they kind of decide the concept, and then you build it. So with your own twist. So it is a fun way to get business and to get exposure, and it helps them too. It's selling it to them, so they see you as an asset, which you are, because it's icing on the cake when the art goes on the walls.
And any suggestions on how to find a broker?
So how I found me through Instagram. So it's how Instagram works too, is if you kind of search and find online some art brokers you're interested in and tag them in your art, they start to notice you over time, and then they pay attention, and then it builds a relationship through social media. But again, you don't have to wait to do that. You can also, they're getting something out of you, so it's a business for them too. So it would not hurt to reach out to them directly.
And are there any good hashtags that you would suggest people follow on Instagram for for the art community and brokers that you've heard of, that are ones that they typically follow?
I don't know particularly. I don't know friends that they would particularly follow, but again, it goes back to I know interior designers are always searching Instagram for ideas. So using words in that lingo, like interior design, conceptual design, and people are, so this woman found me because she liked that I did things different that were outside the box. And she was looking for someone who to do more sculpture like art, not clay, but just 3D was a word she used.
Right.
So really pinning down what you do and what you want to do and keep it consistent. Constantly use that same hashtag. So when they click on it, you're like all over it. It leads to you is what I would suggest with that. Oh, and another one I totally forgot is, and I'll add this and share it, but there's a thing called Later, which you can create your Instagram feed for as long as you'd want. It could be a whole year. I do it more like a month at a time. So then you're not having to post every day.
Right.
It's a collage. You set the stage and you can put the hashtags in and then they save. So you're not rethinking it.
Yeah.
It's pretty genius. And it takes that, you don't have to be sitting on your phone. That's what I know a lot of people are trying to get away from social media, including myself, but it's a part of my business. So I have to be somewhat present on it, but that helps using it through Later. So you're not getting rabbit holed with other people's stuff and scrolling.
That's a good one.
It's more matter of fact.
Yeah. Let's see, how did you find a student to help with the website?
She was actually my babysitter.
She roles.
Right. But then I had this, I'm like, she has more to offer, I can tell. But through SU, the arts program, that's how I ended up finding her for the babysitting thing, but then she happened to be an art student. And through that, she has introduced me to some of her friends who some do video, but it's a really cool energy of these students who are learning because they're hungry and they're excited and they want to be able to show off their skills too. Right. And they're not stuck in their ways. So through the university and the career center is definitely, and I found an amazing young guy to help me in the studio with epoxy through Facebook. So looking for someone to help with epoxy, and I found this guy and he's awesome. So that's another thing. It's hire your weaknesses, I say, when you can. An epoxy resin is a medium I'm kind of known for, and I learned for years how to do it. I know how to do it. I'm good at it now. I wasn't always, but I don't want to do it as much. So, because it's physical, it's toxic, it's a lot. But he'll come in and help me. So it's the same with the marketing piece too.
Yeah, finding help where you could use it.
And I really recommend doing it that way. I did try once to hire a marketing. It wasn't a firm, but it was, and they just didn't match. And a lot of times bigger firms, or it's more of a mold that they follow and they try to fit you in their mold versus
like a formula.
That's a good word. And it started to feel icky about it. It just didn't feel right. And I felt like I wasn't staying true to my integrity around what I wanted to be selling. So that's why I personally find it better to kind of piece it together organically.
Well, so then you stay true to your brand strategy and,
versus someone doing it for you. And it can always evolve. I joke, I've had 3 logos, but they're in the same kind of essence, but that's also in that not staying stagnant, keeping it fresh.
Yeah, absolutely. We have another question about whether or not you do mentoring for other artists and if so, how do they contact you or contract you?
I'd be happy to. I do it for kind of fun, and I love sharing what I've learned and paying it forward. So anyone is welcome to reach out to me directly if you want to know a little more and get a little more in the weeds with the detail of it. And we could come to my studio and visit and all that good stuff. So
that's great. That is great. A couple more questions, and if anybody else has a question, feel free to put it in chat, and I'll read out the question for you. But another one that I wanted to mention was, you mentioned earlier that people don't know what they don't know. And it's been my experience that sometimes the work that I create, I think the message is obvious. And I don't realize that there are some people who are just very literal, and or maybe they won't see how certain pieces could where they could go in their environment, that sort of thing. So do you find that it helps to kind of tell somebody this is great for your business, this would look great in your kitchen or your living room or whatever?
I was so glad you brought that up, because that is so on point to what it took me a while to understand, that as artists, I believe we see things differently than most, and we have the ability to see things before they exist. Very easily, I could walk in a room and tell you what it needed, and
Right.
or you could see your own painting on a wall, like, oh, that would look good there. That is not the case for most people. It's just not. My husband being one of them. But most people don't, and I think that's where we get stuck, because we think, well, duh, the people just see this, right? And they don't. So it's kind of like, people are dumb with that. Like, I'm not calling people dumb, but a little bit. Just think of them that way. And it's because sometimes I feel like it is too much, but no, they need, and they also don't know what they don't know. So your space would look so much better with some brighter art.
Right.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. So they're not thinking of that. They're in their lane. Just doctors are like that. They're in their lane. They're not thinking about, but they want it to be nice. They just, it's not
like
like,
you have to connect those dots.
yeah. So that's, I've done a lot of work for Peninsula Orthopedics, and they're just excited to have art. They don't even really care what it is. So that's the thing. They know they want something, and they see it and they like it, but they do need to be told. And in that social media aspect is a huge place to play with that. And in showing people, and there's so many ways now, like, that you can show video, and people love that. They love watching videos. Sometimes I think that's strange that they like that, but it's mesmerizing to people, because it's different than how they think. So they want to be inspired. So it might feel silly to you, but
but you're also so immersed in the piece, and
you're right,
so deeply into the piece that
it's
you're
like,
oh,
oh, this thing again. Right, you get sick of your own self. But that's the other thing, it's not getting too stuck up on that when you're doing social media. Sometimes, I know I do it still, you judge it like, oh, this isn't done, I could add more, but people they don't know. They just think it's cool and they're excited to see it. So
it's good to remember the lens that you're looking through is not always the same as what everybody else is looking through. So that's good to know. And then a couple more questions. Where is your studio? Where can they find you?
I'm in Salisbury. It's in the industrial park. So it's kind of hidden behind where Lowe's is. It's like a road back there, and I can share the address and all that good stuff. But it's actually conveniently one door down from DeCarlo Printers, who I was running on about earlier with scanning your work. They're right there, and they're so friendly. And I just literally, that's how it works. You drop your art off, and they keep it and scan it. And then they send you a file, and they're very on it about, I know this wasn't the question, but I wanted to say this about protecting the art. They call it the vault. They have a vault for me, and they monitor, if they make sure it's, because I have access to it and I can invite the people I work with to it if I need them, but they'll alert me if someone has joined outside of them. So it's nice.
And those are like archival prints then that they do, and
they can do the actual prints as well. There they can do the professional grade prints, but you can also use the scans that they use to make prints through other cheaper, because they're pretty expensive to use to print, but they're the best quality, but there are other, but they produce that little image that then you can use to
the high-res image.
Yep.
And then do you find with your prints that there's a particular size that works well both economically and sales wise?
100%. I like to think of it as like, I used to go to these poster sales in college and a standard poster sale does pretty well. Because I mean, for what I do bold stuff. So, but too small, unless that's the direction and what you're known for is tiny prints kind of thing, doesn't really do it as much. But anything from 20 by 18-ish to 30 by, I'm making these numbers up, but right in that range, think of a poster is
like 18 by 24.
Yeah, that's a good one.
By 36 or something like, or 30, I think it is.
I have one. Oh, here's one. I mean, this is like a little smaller than a poster, but it's, it's not.
Oh yeah.
And see, this is a print, and it's like it comes all down like this. It's great.
So it's canvas wrapped. Yeah.
This one is not from DeCarlo. This one's from a place it's actually called Canvas Discount. I hate that. I don't like the name because it sounds cheap, but it's very affordable.
And then they do archival prints. That's great.
Yep. And the quality isn't as great as the DeCarlo, but it's still it's a good quality. And they do the gallery wrap. They do all sorts of different prints and framing. They can frame it too. It's pretty cool for when you're doing a show. It's not as huge of an investment.
Yeah. That's great. Good information to have, especially locally.
Yes, 100%.
Let's see. Does anyone else have any additional questions? Oh, thank you. Thank you, Lisa. A great presentation.
Thank
you. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in chat. But in the meantime, I just wanted to thank Abby again for sharing all of her expertise and experience, and also thank the Worcester County Arts Council for supporting the Art League's Business of Art series. Let's see. Any other questions before we wrap up? I think we still have some more time. And if it's easier than chatting, you can unmute at this point and just ask us directly.
Hi there.
There you go.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. It was wonderful. I appreciate all the information that you gave. I would like to know how we can contact you, the phone number, email address, a website, anything.
Absolutely. So my email address is Abbi, like my name, ABBI, at Abbi, ABBI, Custis, CUSTIS.com. And that's my website as well, abbicustis.com. And I can send a follow-up with.
Yeah, we'll send that information out with the other follow-up information you have. We'll send that to everybody on the class.
Because I know I gave you a bunch of information, and I was saying earlier, I'm happy to share the presentation and the websites that I use. So you don't have to remember it all. I'm happy to share.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Any other questions? Well, I'll ask one more.
Sure.
Well, maybe people are still thinking. So back to the list. So it sounds like you probably segment them based on different venues. Is that right? For your list?
I segment them, and through MailChimp, you can tag your people based on where you met them and where they're from. And, are they if you think they're more interested in product, or are they more interested in the higher end stuff? And then you can go through and tag how you want your mailer to go out. And so not everybody might be interested in plates.
Right.
So you can pin it, or by town. I often do it by town because I have my husband's from Virginia, so I'm there a lot, and I have a pretty big audience of shoppers there.
Right. Well, that makes sense.
So then I personally don't like getting a lot of, I struggled with doing newsletters at first because I don't like getting a lot of that kind of mail. So I make sure they're very on purpose when I send them and to the right audience.
That actually brings me to another question, and hopefully I didn't miss that. But how often do you send your newsletter?
So it depends on my mood, but I try to do something about once a month.
Yeah.
And then when the holidays, I'm a little more active because of my gift line. But I don't want to oversaturate.
Right.
I just don't.
You don't want to overwhelm them, but you also want to have a presence.
Right.
So it's that balance.
And that's why when I send them, I want them to be meaty, something beyond just a quick sale, like just a little more depth to them. And information sharing as well as what you're working on, more of a story versus just sending it to send.
Yeah. Yeah. Good content.
Right.
Yeah. So that people will continue to open it, not just going through the motions of sending it out. So,
but again, if you're looking to really build a product line, and you want to, and your goal when you play with this is to be, selling product in a magazine or on Amazon and have this, like, that's your main source of income. It requires a little more of that.
Right.
If that's what you're doing, you're going to sell product constantly. You got to be sending it out. But that's why I wasn't a match for that marketing company, because they wanted me to do all that. And it just,
yeah. Well, you also have to have time for studio. So,
right. It takes a lot. That's why at America's Mart, I couldn't do it any longer. I might go back with just prints, but the product line was a lot.
Well, that's good. That's good to know. We have another question about Etsy, and I think the question is, what do you think of Etsy as a marketplace?
I cannot speak for Etsy because I've never done it. And I had my own stereotypes about Etsy, but I'm sure it's a wonderful place to get started. And I know people do really well on it. And I know I've heard it's pretty user friendly. And I've gone on Etsy and I bought things before. So I just never went down that path personally.
Okay.
So I can't really speak to it.
Yeah, that's still good to know. Any other questions from anyone?
Because you can do this square space you can create something like an Etsy page. It's a very similar look and feel. But it's just, I know Etsy has a bigger.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't think I realized.
Put your products and all that on Squarespace.
Oh, Squarespace. I was thinking you said Square.
Square does have a feature to do that. Square does way more than I realized.
Yeah, I was just when you said that, I was thinking I didn't realize
they have a store.
That much depth. Yeah.
Yeah, but Square. I know there's so many like online things, so many platforms.
Let's see. We have another one here. Where do most brokers work? Locally or I guess
all over. Because that's the beauty of it. And it depends on the agreement. So I can only speak to what I know and this woman I work with, but we signed a contract and she's out of Richmond. I've never physically met her. I've just talked to her and Zoomed with her and stuff. But when something sells, it sold on her website exclusively, not mine. I direct people through my website to her website. And then if she makes a sale, she sends me a shipping label and I ship it. It's on me to ship it out. And then depending on the contractor agreement, for example, say we're going to have this up for 60 days. So then at the end of 60 days, depending what sells, then she'll send me a check and she'll take a percentage, but I get a check from it. And then I'm not shipping her all the art. It's still in my hands. So with this one in particular, it's collections she does. So it's not just anything you have. It's more or less you work together to build a collection that she thinks her audience will like. And then she promotes it.
Okay, it's like a curated collection. She works
Yep.
with one and then she promotes it.
Mhm.
And just to reiterate, so she found you, right, through Instagram. And I think that's what I've heard before as well. Is, through Instagram, putting your work out there, using, being specific about your hashtags, so that they can easily find you.
And when they want to, they're not going to take someone on who's sloppy in their marketing,
Mhm.
because you're a reflection of them.
Right.
So they're going to look at that. They're going to see, oh, she's groomed in her marketing. It looks good. It's consistent. It's on brand for her.
Mhm.
I feel confident sending my clients to her site.
Right. It's professional. It's
Yep.
yeah, consistent. Let's see. Another question. Have you
With social media and I think as an artist, it's good to share a little of your life in there to make it personal. And I struggle with that because I don't really feel like doing that. But
Right.
I know people like learning about me and my family and stuff. So I think that's important, but in a fine line.
Yeah,
So,
a little bit of personality, but
yep.
still
But you
containing.
don't want to go on there and see all
Yeah.
pictures from your friend, too many things.
It's not the place for all of the vacation photos.
Yes. And like a picture of your lunch, like, so
Right.
it's that's why if you want to have two, you have a personal one. If you already have an Instagram that's very personal, I would totally recommend starting you can have multiple Instagram accounts. So have a couple. So you have one that's focused towards business
Mhm.
and not as much personal stuff on there.
Another question that just came in: have you been approached by NFT people on Instagram? I guess that means to
I
do.
have, and I haven't done anything with it. That whole world freaks me out. But I'm curious, but no, I haven't dabbled there yet. But I have had approaches, and I don't know, the Instagram is also, you have to be careful because half of it's fake, I feel like. And that's another thing with the social media and people who are once you start branding yourself, you, I think, become on a list where there's a lot of fake, they're trying to scam you. So they'll say, hey, my wife wants this painting. I have cash.
Get that like at least a couple times a
So
month.
just be careful of that, because they look at it as a target. And also with social media, people buy their fans. So don't get intimidated with artists that have all these followers, because you can buy followers. So I think it doesn't get you anywhere. It's for your ego if you need that, but it's growing them organically is the way to go. And tagging people helps, as they see it. That's the best way. And tagging companies that you're interested in, or stores local stores that you think might be a good match. Start putting them in your Instagram posts, and then they'll notice you and follow you back, and it builds this connection.
Yeah. And there's probably even a list that you can Google as far as good hashtags for like designers, or,
Yes.
the purpose, whatever the purpose is. So a painting, maybe you want to Google hashtags for interior designers, or if it's a homeware item, then maybe you're going to use different hashtags for that.
100%. And that later that later thing I was saying about generates hashtags. It can help you generate the appropriate hashtags for the post. So there's lots of resources for that nowadays, which is nice.
Yeah, probably a lot of videos too, if you're not familiar with Instagram, just to get you started.
YouTube, I never really was into YouTube until recently, because you can learn pretty much anything on there. And also tutorials on any of these things I was just talking about have a million different tutorials to walk you through the different things, which is so nice.
Yeah, I found a lot of these companies have these knowledge base videos or places like step-by-step articles as opposed to like a customer service where they can walk you through it. So whether it's for websites or Instagram or Canva, whatever, there's usually a video with instructions to do what you just have to put in the right keywords in the Google search.
Yeah, and with your website, this was just, I thought of this, even if you don't do it right away, to go ahead and secure the name you'd want for that, because people just buy website names. You'd be totally surprised. So just to secure it, so everyone takes it, is would be good. And you can have a website with very basic things on it, just a picture, and say contact me, just so it shows you have a presence. I think it's a good thing for when people are digging down the rabbit hole of you and your art. They see, oh, she's got a website, or he's got a website, so it's like street cred. A little bit.
Let's see, we have another question. It says, I think this probably relates to scammers. Do you find that you have a lot of, do you have to block a lot of people on Instagram for, either scammy messages or, messages that aren't meant for your art? Or are there ways to control that?
Well, it's to not buy followers is what I don't, because then you get all these fake scamming type things, and to stay, you can block people if they comment on something inappropriate or it feels strange. You can block them or report them. I had one problem once when I was doing a lot of cross promotional things, and it was a lot of exposure. Someone created a fake, it was a giveaway. I was doing a giveaway, and then someone created a fake account, I think, and suddenly all these people thought they won the giveaway. I mean, it was a mess.
Oh man.
But they understood, and as soon as I reported it went away.
They took it down.
Yeah. But I haven't had anything like anyone stealing anything. I mean, it's just keeping track of it, and it's just not staying connected to it enough that you know what's going on. I think it's important once you start to grow.
Yeah, it's just staying on top of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other people comment on you? People will reach out to you through that too. So it's another way, and that's another way for you too to self-promote. And again, be that annoying person that keeps sending the messages, and one day they'll just want to talk to you because they want you to stop texting.
Repetition. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that you have to put your work in front of somebody, whether this is for business or your personal work, like 9 to 12 times, if it's somebody that doesn't have a connection to you, before they really start to recognize that it's the same person, and to open that door.
Yes, 100, and that goes for interior designers as well. Because of social media, we have such exposure to so many different people. So just finding for fun a collection of interior designers that they don't have to be local, that meet your aesthetic and follow them. And things, and build that connection.
I think that's a really good point. Finding someone who meets your aesthetic. I think that's a really good point. You want to make sure you're targeting or putting your work in front of people where it makes sense.
Yes, that's what I mentioned. Find your place. Get really clear on your place. So then then for them, it's a match naturally. It's like, oh, of course, wow, like this would fit my design aesthetic perfect. Yeah.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. Does anyone else want to chime in with anything before we start to wrap up? And you can feel free to unmute and just ask directly.
And again, I'm available. We'll share my information if you have any questions after as well.
Okay. I think that's it. Looks like everybody was just saying thanks for the presentation and super interesting.
Good. I'm
So
glad.
thank you, Abby. This has been a great, this has just been a ton of great information. And then everybody who was on this Zoom will get the follow-up information that Abby was talking about.
Yep, I will. Glad to share it all. So.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And thank you again,
Nice.
Abby. And I think that concludes it.
Well, have a great evening. Enjoy this beautiful weather. It was nice meeting you all, sort of, kind of, but hopefully
Sort of,
we'll meet again.
All right, great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks, Abby. Bye.
guys.